E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā maunga whakahi, e ngā awatārai whenua o tēnā iwi, o tēnā hapu, o tēnā whānau, o tēnā marae, nau mai, piki mai, nau mai, whakakotahi mai, e te karango tēnei rā, arā te tiaki i tō tātou tai au. Tēnei tātou, e ruku ki roto i te wānanga, ki te whakawhirawhira i ētahi mātauranga, hei kai mā tātou katoa. Kia tīmtai tēnei hui rungi te pai, me noi tātou. Waire i runga, waire i raro, waire i roto, waire i waho, waire i ngā tau kāia, kei wainunu i a tātou katoa, ko ia te here i a tātou, ki te whenua, ki te rangi, ki wairo mai ki a tātou, tēnei tātou e ruku ki te wānanga, tūturu whakamaua ki a tīna, tīna. Haumie, huie, tāia. So kia ora everyone, welcome back to the second out of 3 in the series of engagement kōrero that Enviro Hub have set up. Today we have a really cool speaker, and I'll try not to take up too much time so we can hear his kōrero, and I'll also try not to take up too much time asking him questions. However, like we did yesterday, if you're joining us on Zoom, please keep your microphone on mute. If you do have questions throughout it though, feel free to tap away in the chat function and send us those questions. As well, we'll have question time at the end, so you can unmute then and ask questions if you want. Just raise your hand or let us know that you're keen to ask a pārtai. Before we get into it though, we're going to play a video to give you an idea of the kōrero for today.
Tēnā koutou e ho mā, ko tūranga Philip John Treanor, tōku ingoa. Anei te pepeha. Ko matawhaura te maunga ki te tonga, ko roto iti ki te aihinga te moana. Ko te arawa te waka, ko Ngāti Pikia te iwi. Ko Ngāti Hinerangi, rāua ko Ngāti Hinekiri nā hapu. Tēnā koutou e hoa mā. I'm John. My real name is Tūranga, but I am known far and wide as John. Some of my upbringing as a young child was right here on the whenua. Anei te whenua ko Tāheke Papakainga, e toru nā whenua. Ko Waipapa 183 ki te Karapu, ko te Kaingahu kei Kora, ko te Wehikura kei Konei. These are the 3 parcels of land that come under the jurisdiction of Tāheke Papakainga. In the 50s, this whenua was of a pristine condition. From the 1960s onwards, this land was converted from its native vegetation into pastoral land. From the 70s onward, the land was overgrown with blackberry and gorse. 2 years ago, it was decided that the land would be restored to its proper status, and Project Whakahaumanu was created. Project Whakahaumanu, to revive and restore the whenua, is driven by the aspirations of our tupuna. We receive spiritual guidance as to how, when, and what we will do on the whenua. We seek that inspiration each day when we arrive on the whenua, and before we undertake any work, we are standing near our tupuna, within our tupuna, to feel their vibes. And it is from those vibes that we are able to restore the mana of the whenua. Because as the whakatauki goes, ka ora te whenua, ka ora ngā tangata. And it is with that inspiration from those tupuna that we are able to carry on this work to the point that we have received today. And we anticipate that with further guidance that we will achieve the most of the project within 2 years' time. Kia ora.
Oh, that was awesome. I'm glad we got that up and going because it does set the context for our kōrero today. So I'm glad, thank you for that, Hannah, for persevering and getting that sound going. Obviously, I'll try to be neutral, but I can't help but be a bit biased and say that this is one of my favourite programs or projects because it is home for me. But before we get into it, some of the pātai, I will hand over to you, Matua John, to introduce yourself.
Ai, tēnā koutou, ko tūranga Philip John Treanor, tōku ingoa. I'm known far and wide as John, and that is not my real name, but the mispronunciation of my ingoa tupuna was so bad that it was better to be known as John than to be called Tauranga, Turangi, Turanga, and all those other awkward distortions of an ancestral name. I whakapapa to Ngāti Pīkea through a number of the hapu, ranging from the top of Lake Rotoiti down to the bottom, to Tapu Aiharuru, out to Ngāti Makino, no Otamaraka, where I was born. The Karaua there, the Tupuna Karaua, Te Whiti Winiti, and from that his daughter Rangichiaria Winiti married Ngānikara Hohepa Maka, no Okere me Tahiki. Some of my upbringing, as in the video clip, was on the whenua at Tahiki, and that was back in the mid-50s for a short period, and then again in the late 50s, again back on the whenua. So that is my brief introduction of the links to the whenua. My background is that I left school at the age of 16. I joined the New Zealand Army and stayed there for 22 years, and then worked in a succession of government departments. The last appointment I had was with the Ministry of Justice at the Palmerston North Courthouse in the Manawatu. From there, I then became a funeral director, a funeral celebrant, and then I came home. It was time to come home, back to Ngāti Pīkea. And I came home to lead a quiet life, keep out of everybody's road, but that wasn't to last very long. And then I became involved in the affairs of Ngāti Pīkea through a number of trusts, Rotoiti 3v3, Te Tāhuna, and also out to Pukanga Taru, no te iwi o Ngāti Pukenga. So that's where I am, where my origins and where I am at now.
Tēnā koe whakamōhio mai anō, I au kōrero. I do have a script here with some questions, but I might go off script. You mentioned about your name and its mispronunciation, and I think that's something that's seen throughout Te Ao Māori. Do you want to talk to us, how important is correct pronunciation? Because there's a lot of conservation groups out there that are working on Māori whenua, and so any words of encouragement for them when it comes to pronouncing the names of those whenua correctly? Any tips and tricks as well?
Oh, I think the first trick is to ask somebody that knows how to pronounce a name correctly, whether it be the name of a whenua or the name of a person. It's extremely important because those names are ancestral names. And if you call it anything else or mispronounce it, anything else other than its proper pronunciation, you're actually on another track, which has nothing to do with either the person's name, be it an ancestral name, or the name of a whenua. Very important.
And I do know people are striving to be better at that. So any tips and tricks they can do to pronounce them better, I know they'll give it a crack. Definitely wise words. So that was, as I said, that was a beautiful video. And obviously it tugged on my heartstrings because, like I said, that's home for me. But no doubt it had a lot of impacts far and wide to those who've seen it, and likely those who will see it when they watch this video again. How was telling your story like that, or in any other way, worked for your kaupapa?
Well, extremely easy. And I spoke about the support of our tupuna. And when you're talking about that particular take, you know that tupuna are there encouraging and supporting, and what you're doing, and even how you're saying it. So sometimes you think, well, I didn't say that, somebody else was saying it, but I was just the mouthpiece for it as an avenue for the words to get out.
In the video, and just in your answer there, you talked about tupuna. Is it hard sometimes to communicate with non-Māori, that connection?
It's an approach thing on how you talk to other people, and it's a matter of choosing words or correct words so that they understand it. While we may well be talking at ease to each other, but when you are talking to an outsider, you need to probably modify the language or the description and the explanation of what you're trying to get across to them. And look, in their ignorance, and I say that in the softest of the interpretation of ignorance, is that they probably do not see it through the same eyes that you do. I'd like to give an explanation, if I may, Tame, about how I explain certain things to other people of other cultural backgrounds. And I take the word urupa, and I describe that to people by splitting the word into two parts. Uru, to be underground, and pa, to be a village. And to say to them that this is where our ancestors lie, is an underground village, where our dead people live. And that kind of causes raised eyebrows when you're trying to explain it to them. But by saying it in a light-hearted manner, it gets through to them that we revere our ancestors, our tupuna, and we still regard them, and they are. They are living beings in another dimension.
I like that. I've never heard that the kupu being broken up like that. So, tēnei ka mihi ki a koe. That's a good one for my kete, my knowledge basket. So thank you. Probably onto another big Māori concept. What does Kaitiakitanga mean to you?
For lots of people, it can have different meanings, but for me, it's care, and it can be across a range of things. If it's about the land, well, it's care of the land. If it's about one another, or it's care for one another, and that is a thought process. It's not it sometimes is not a tangible thing. It can be an intangible thing, kaitiakitanga, in terms of where your thought process is at, and perhaps how it can be converted into the physical.
I'm going to again go off script here. Tell us about your childhood, your upbringing. I imagine it is a far cry from what people experience now in their upbringings today. But I have a feeling that this concept of sustainability and conservation as we see it now wouldn't be uncommon for you back when you were growing up. So where were you born?
I was born in Otamaraka, under the korowai of Ngāti Mākinu. And I just want to take you back to those growing up times. We lived in a whare with a dirt floor, so I suppose that's about as close as you can get to Papatūānuku as one is ever going to get. And life wasn't easy. Life was very basic, but there was all manner of kai. We didn't exactly starve, but we didn't live that well in respect to European style of living and European food and those sorts of things. But I do recall in Waitahanui stream catching mullet. Now, mullet lives in the sea.
Yeah.
But right next, close to our whare, was a very small abattoir. And of course, every so often, the blood and guts would be let loose into the stream. And then we'd have the fish coming up out of the ocean to come and feast on the offal and drink the blood and all the rest of the stuff that was coming out of the abattoir. Our particular piece of whenua was used as a marakai, and people from Ngāti Pikiau, particularly the whānau hohepa, would come across and plant their crops, because our whare stood on the top of the hill and would have the sun from sunup to sundown. And I recall quite a large area of rewai, kumara, watermelon, cucumber, and back in the day, Chinese gooseberries, kiwi fruit, growing on that particular patch of whenua. So in terms of that kind of food, there was no shortage. But in the other things, the material things and the European type foods, very seldom and very sparse.
Yeah, to me that highlights that connection with the whenua that you've had to live. Your survival relied on the health of the whenua, especially when you talk of a dirt floor.
Yes.
I know some people that would pay to have that now, to have that connection. And hear you, So how does it play out in your current mahi then with the conservation system? It sounds like you've got a bit of a green thumb. And before we went live, you were talking about planting manuka. Talk us through that. Has it helped with the conservation mahi?
Conservation was never a thought process. And I think it was never a thought process because you lived and breathed it. And therefore it's not a conscious, or probably not even a subconscious thing. It is just part of nature. But I just want to go back, just digress a little bit. Bob Marley lived in a whare with a dirt floor, and he became world famous. I lived in a whare with a dirt floor, and I've never ever been famous for anything. But ingari, we better move on. But look, we're going to be acknowledging and celebrating Matariki very shortly. Back in the day, I recall at Otamaraka, the elders and my parents, and us too, of course, standing outside our whare, looking up into the skies to wait for and then observe Matariki. And I can recall quite vividly those people, my mother and the elders, talking about how the season was going to be. And in particular, when and probably what sort of crops. So yes, I suppose that's what was implanted in my mind subconsciously, without giving thought to, I'm going to be a conservationist when I grow up. And once upon a time I couldn't spell the word, but here we are.
You talked about not being famous. Just wait till this gets out, you'll be super famous. I like that though. You mentioned Matariki. and we're seeing this huge and growing appetite for mātauranga Māori. Are you utilising that in the conservation efforts, matariki and other mātauranga?
In as much as one's subconscious thoughts are, if it's in your mind, you don't actively go out to look for it. It happens without you becoming aware or writing it down. It's like taking a step forward. It's not a conscious thing that you think about, I must take a step forward. If you want to go from A to B, you start walking. And this is where this, if we go back to this Pākehā thinking, conservation comes from. That's where we're at, or where I'm at.
I guess sometimes people look for a really profound answer, but it can't be any simpler than just put a step in front of the other to get from A to B. Any guidance then for probably perhaps non-Māori or even some Māori wanting to include mātauranga in their conservation efforts? How would they go about seeking and appropriately utilising mātauranga? Any tips for them?
I'm deep in thought now to try and put that into words. But I think the first thing is that there must be a thought process about it. There must be, this needs to be done. I want to do it. I want to be part of it. And that will enable the person or persons to take the next step to say, well, yes, this is the thought, but how am I now going to put those thoughts into action? And it's important to have that dream, because the dream leads on to a vision. The vision leads on to some thoughts. Well, how am I going to put this vision into action? And if you keep the dream alive and the vision, then other things develop from it. And there's a whole range of things. I can keep dreaming about it, I can keep thinking about it, but I need to start planning it. And from planning that, you then reach out to those who are able to help you put the plan together. Thus far.
That is brilliant. And it ties in nicely with what Hannah was talking about yesterday, with having a good, an outline of your vision, your mission, your values, linking it all together. So essentially everyone knows where you're going and how you're going to get there. You finished that answer talking about connecting with others. So do you want to walk us through how important is connecting with the wider community, and how do you go about doing it?
It's of the utmost importance. If you're wanting to realize this dream, you must reach out far and wide. And it means reaching right across the community. And the community are central government, regional government, local government, the community at large, but in particular, you must reach out to your kaumātua. And then after that, you reach out to others, whānau, owners, and to sum it up, you must reach out to the community at large, and all of those that live within the community at large or exist within the community at large, far and wide, whoever they may be. Each and every one of them are part of your vision. And without each and every one of them, there will always be a gap. And in some cases, the gap might be too wide to cover, to reach over in respect to your dream and vision.
Has that been the case for you? It's been too big of a gap?
Beg your pardon?
Has that been the case for you, that you've talked to some community and it's too big of a gap to breach or to to engage?
No,
Nice.
no. It's and again, I've got to go back to my previous work with in the various government departments and agencies, and work at large with the community. And in particular, part of that is my time as a funeral director. You are covering the whole spectrum of human behavior, human attitudes, human professionalism, and the ordinary human being on the street. So all of those are important, and narrowing some of those gaps is knowing how to reach over that gap to perhaps rein in or to bring on board is probably the better answer or description of those that may appear to be in quite a wide gap from your aspirations and vision. And it means going out and talking to people. It means communicating with people in a language that they best understand. So you will need to step out of your comfort space in how you communicate and how you deal with people to reach over and be able to discuss with other people who are not in the same space as you are. And I go back again to that description of explaining to people about the word urupa. And it's that sort of explanation is really important in every other dealings with the community at large, because you need to talk to different sectors of the community in a different manner. You would not talk to the multi-millionaire that lives next door to our whenua as you would talk to the person that is driving the truck that is clearing out the transfer station. And that's not to say that the driver who is clearing out the transfer station is less important to the next door multi-millionaire. It's the manner in which you talk and describe what your kaupapa is about that will get the message across that wide sector of the community.
I like that. And I mean, my dad's always spoken highly of you as the chair of 3v3, and he's always put it down to you've got good people skills. But hearing you so elegantly explain it makes it seem easy, but I know it's difficult. I know it's easier said than done.
It means actually taking a deep breath before you approach that particular group within the community, and also thinking through how you are going to talk to them. And it doesn't mean to say if you're going to talk to the multimillionaire that you've got to try and develop a plum in your mouth. It means that you've got to talk to that particular person in a language that they can understand, or in a way that they can understand your message. And it also goes the other way. If you're talking to the truck driver, you talk in the language that the truck driver understands the best, but you don't lose focus of what you're trying to explain or discuss your particular kaupapa.
How about this then? How important is it to connect tamariki and mokopuna to Te Taiao, and how do you go about doing that?
Oh, first of all, that is the most important group of the community. One reason, they are the ones that have got to take the future of this planet onwards. They are going to be responsible when we're unable to, or when our day on earth is done. They are so important in in anything that we do in our life, whether it's conservation, whether it's the taiao, whether it's talking to them. And again, that's a group of our community that you talk to them, not in baby fashion, not in a childish fashion, but in a fashion that they understand what you're saying. And it means that you modify your way of talking, the language, how you use your language, so that it is understood by them in comparison to how you would talk to a group of adults, from irrespective of what sector of the community that they come from. They are of the utmost importance. And we have tamariki on the whenua doing their planting, and we always say that if one or two of them will take up this challenge into the future, then our future is well assured. But we get the impression out of a group of 10 kids that 9 of them will take on that challenge in one form or another. They are so excited. There's a number of reasons why they're excited, and in no order of priority is probably time out of the classroom. And I would put that at the other end of the spectrum. It's probably the least of the reasons why they want to be there. The first one is that they want to be back in nature. They want to be away from the gadgetry, all the whiz bangs, all of the mobile phones, Xboxes, etc. Being back in nature for the majority of tamariki is a real experience, and it is. It's a real experience being on a whenua, getting one's hands dirty, but at the same time creating life or ensuring that life is able to continue. They take great delight in putting something into the ground, knowing that that particular plant or plants are going to be the product of their efforts. And of course, along with that, you're explaining what that plant or plants are going to do for the environment, going to do for our well-being, our health, and the betterment of life in general. Our tamariki are so important. Tamariki mokopuna are so important in establishing or cleaning up our environment and ensuring that there's a better future.
I dare say with an answer like that, you'll get adults wanting to leave the office and come hang out and do some mahi to reconnect.
We've had them. The word has got around that if you want to do something different on a Saturday or Sunday morning, get in touch with the people at Taiheke and come and put some plants in the ground. To the point where we've had the Tokalauan community come out and do some planting, and they want to come back.
That's cool. We get it. I should go back to script, but tell us about the restoration project. Give us a rundown of what's going on.
It's probably a good idea, I think, to go back to its beginnings.
Nice.
In every event, there is a silver lining. And 2 years ago, when we all went into lockdown, into the COVID lockdown, that was the silver lining for Project Whakahaumanu. Us senior citizens had to go into lockdown 2 weeks before the rest of the country. And in that time, in that 8 weeks of being in lockdown, is what to do, how to keep oneself amused, and what does one do with all that time sitting inside the house. So the opportunity, that lockdown provided the opportunity to sit down and do a plan. A plan about what? let's pick conservation. Where? I know the perfect place, Tahiki. And so the plan was created during the COVID lockdown. And I have to at this stage acknowledge land care, because when somebody knows nothing about conservation and who to contact, you look in the phone book and you think, well, there's somebody, an organisation that must know something about conservation because their name says land care. So you ring land care, or person at land care, and you get hold of a very nice person called Janie Stevenson. And Janie was the person that set the project rolling by way of establishing the contacts through central, through regional government, Engari, the Aroha Mai, Environmental Bay of Plenty, Robert Barry, and it snowballed from there to whoever else to contact. And even Raina Meha was a name that was put up, and a person, and Raina was also very helpful in passing on other contacts. And so that's how it snowballed, that Project Whakahaumanu got started. What to call it? It's quite important to have a title for anything that happens. And so the word project, the word Whakahaumanu was created or used to describe the project, enough to revive and restore to health. At the end of stage 4 of the lockdown, Environmental Bay of Plenty wished to meet with us on the whenua to talk about Project Whakahaumanu. And I guess from there, things started to move forward. But in conjunction with that, the government had announced through DOC, the Kaimahi for Nature, and that was to take care or to accommodate those tourism workers who had been laid off because of the downturn in visitors. And in particular, one of the groups, the rafting groups off the Kaituna River, Kaitiakitanga Adventures, was named as a possible group that could assist with the project. So contact was established with Kaitiakitanga Adventures. They had the right kaupapa, they had the right thought processes, and so meetings were arranged with them. The plan was discussed with them. The plan met theirs and the project's requirements, and so we kicked off Project Whakahaumanu. And this month is the second year that the project has been in operation.
So what's it looking like now? I know it's early days then. What's the whenua looking like now?
It looks different. I think that's probably, if you asked me to describe it in 2 words, I would say it looks different. It looks different from the point of view is that we have removed probably in excess of 5 hectares of gorse and blackberry. We have taken 2 pieces of the whenua and created 2 new wetlands. We have uncovered 2 former wetlands and are now working to bring them back to full life. The 2 new wetlands are up and running because they were created by extensive plantings, the proper use of the water that lay on top of the whenua. But the challenge is to bring the former wetlands back to life. And the status of that is probably they are about 80% back to full life. There has been the removal of old tumble down and derelict fences and replacement with new fences where required to protect wetlands, and to start fencing off areas that are where we're going to create ngahere. And there are 3 areas on hillside, erosion-prone hillsides that are going to be fenced off and converted to ngahere. So the whenua does look different, and has drawn favourable comment from all sectors of the community. In particular, and I have to mention from our well-heeled community, I guess, who probably at the start of the project were sceptical about its success. And we've been able to overturn their reservations and have them now come on board. I would think that 99% of those residents are now on board with the project. And I can say that with great conviction, because those very people are now helping the project with either services or in kind, with materials, and in one particular instance with helping to establish the project, draw a substantial amount of finance to help towards the project.
And so what drew that support? Was it from seeing the wins, from seeing the changes in the whenua?
What was that again, please, Tame?
What drew that support? What made them change their mind? Was it just seeing the wins, seeing the whenua?
There's a combination of things that have contributed to their thinking. One is a willingness to talk to them, a willingness to introduce the team as being the project team to work on the whenua. There's been a willingness to engage with them at every opportunity, to speak to them in words and language that they best understand, to be open to their questions, even though those questions may have been of doubt or skepticism, but to reassure them that progress is going to be made. And it's probably important to talk to them in short, medium, and long-term progress. Because in short-term progress, you can say that an event is going to take place in a week's time, and it happens within a week's time. So therefore, that reassurance is there immediately. They see something that has happened in the short term. You then introduce the midterm, that is, we are now working to have this happen in 5 months' time, 6 months' time. And then, of course, the long term is to say that in 2 years' time, 4 years' time, 5 years' time, this will happen. So 2 years ago, from starting with overgrown blackberry and gorse and other rubbish that was lying around on the whenua, to where we are now at the 2 year point, where everything we said that would happen in 2 years' time, 2 years ago, is now in place. And they are also being briefed about what is going to happen again very shortly, the short term, and also snippets of the medium and the long term. And it's quite important with that PR, public relations, of keeping them informed, because what that does is that it quells some of the rumour mongering, the doubts, the individual perceptions of what is or what is not happening, and generally people trying to guess what is going to happen. So if you tell as many, telling all and sundry that this is going to happen at specific points along the progress of the project, it quells to a great amount any rumour mongering, gossip, and misinformed talk.
I see the end time is fast approaching, so for anyone who does have questions, feel free to flick them through or sing out and we'll come to you. I did have another question for you. You talked before about planting a special kind of manuka on the whenua.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about those as well?
Yes. Back in the 50s, one parcel of the whenua of Te Wehikura was a thicket of manuka. It was that thick that you couldn't walk through it because each of the manuka trees would probably no more than probably about 120 to 150 centimetres apart. They was that thick you could not walk through it. And when I came home, well, there was nothing there but blackberry. In the day, manuka was regarded as a pest plant and was to be eradicated and cut out as quickly as possible, and the land converted to pasture or to other crops. So it was a heart's desire to return that particular piece of whenua back to how it used to be. And in one corner of the whenua was a very small copse of the original manuka that grew on that whole area. So we sought advice from a nursery, and they said, well, cut branchlets off, and making sure that the buds on those branchlets were still closed, and placed them in a rubbish bag, paper rubbish bag, close up the paper rubbish bag and leave the rubbish bag in the sun to burst open the buds. And from that one rubbish bag, we were able to propagate 2,225 manuka plants. When they were growing, we were asked by the nursery where had these manuka come from. We explained, and we were told that this manuka is unique. And we were shown examples of other manuka, and these particular manuka look nothing like those other manuka. The manuka were described to us as being of a wetland variety, which grows nowhere else in the world, except in this particular part of the whenua. So one's heart was overjoyed to know that we were putting back what belonged on the whenua, and that was indigenous manuka. And standing proudly on the top of the small copse of manuka, and as explained to anybody, to all and sundry, and particularly our tamariki, those kura kids, that those are the parents of the manuka that they are about to plant. So that has special significance to those kids because they're planting, putting back into the whenua the children that belong to the small copse of trees standing on top of the hill. It's a very unique piece of undertaking from many aspects. It's returning what belonged there. It's putting back in there something that is unique to that place, and nowhere else in the world it looks different, and it belongs only in that particular place.
I have to check it out because I knew there was a lot of different varieties of manuka, but hearing that is certainly special, knowing that it comes from that whenua as well, o tāwana whenua.
In Tame, if you saw on that video clip those shots of the manuka, those are the plants.
I wonder.
Yeah, you have a look at them, you'll notice that they are a lighter green, the leaf is a lighter green. They're a broader leaf than any other manuka, and they have a light brown stem. There's no other manuka that has that colour. They are all a grey or a dark coloured stem. They are a wetland manuka, unique to that part of to that whenua and that whenua alone.
It's so valuable. I guess that also highlights the value of these restoration projects, because some people could just dismiss it for manuka and then it could be lost forever. I see we haven't got much time left. If there's no more questions, any final whakaaro that you'd like to share with them? Because I mean, what you've shared already would take people a lifetime to learn. So to fit all of that in an hour was very special. But any final whakaaro that you think, opportunities for people and what they should know before they get into this or as they're involved in this type of mahi?
Absolutely. You must have the vision. You must have the dream. You must be prepared to put in the hard yards, and that's both administratively and physically. You must, if you are hoping to have some financial gain from doing this kind of mahi, I implore of anybody to regard any financial gain as a reward and not an objective. Everyone is entitled to earn money to survive, to live and survive. But if you are going to get involved in this particular type of mahi, particularly if it's on whenua land, you must regard all of the activities, particularly in respect to taking money for your efforts, as a reward, not an objective. You must also be prepared that there will be challenges along the way. There will be challenges in respect to perhaps pessimism, skepticism, working with the bureaucracy, and also the hard physical work. I can assure you that the hard physical work is good for one's state of mind and for one's physical well-being. Personally, and this is the first time I used the word my pulse rate is 54. The normal adult pulse rate is 72. Mine is 54. I have lost 9 kgs since I've been on the project. And if anybody wants a sprint up Jalco Road, that's uphill, please give me a yell and we'll meet at the crossroads and I'll give you a 5 meters head start. But there are challenges. There's financial challenges, there's bureaucratic challenges, skepticism, pessimism, but what lies at the end of it is achievement. And always be governed by what your tupuna are saying or what they're imparting into you through their spiritual connection, the wairua of the whole thing. Always be aware that do not take anything on your whenua until such time as you receive that guidance, that spiritual guidance from your tupuna. Because they are the inhabitants of long, long ago, and their stay on that whenua is important to your stay there in the mahi that you do on the whenua. Be prepared to ask questions. Be prepared to humble yourself and say, I don't understand, I don't know, I need your help. And be asked anywhere, everywhere, at all levels, because at all of those varying levels, there is always somebody wanting to help. Do not be put off about the stories of working with the bureaucracies. If you are straightforward, if you are honest, and if you are simple in your dealings with the various agencies, people, particularly bureaucracies, they will help you. And at the end of it, enjoy what you're doing. Particularly enjoy working alongside your tupuna. They are the guiding light, the guiding force. And all that happens on the whenua is through your tupuna. They are there to help you if you're there to do the right thing. Kia ora.
Oh, before I finish up, I know Rotoiti Rugby Premier Team are looking for some players, so if you've got the boots, head on down to training. There must be a job.
Yeah.
Great to hear that. I mean, you touched on all of it. Te taha tinana, te taha wairua, te taha hinengaro, te taha whānau hoki, all of that. And how can one not be excited and enthusiastic about this type of mahi when someone like yourself touches on all of those kaupapa? But with that, I just want to thank you once again for sharing an awesome kōrero. I consider myself a nerd and a geek when it comes to this stuff, so I could have listened to you all day. And I know that people watching either live now or in future will certainly appreciate the kōrero you've shared. Nō reira, tēnei ka mihi kātika ki a koe, nā ui whakaki ēnei ki te mātauranga. Mei kore ake koe me pēhā tātou te tino ruku ki tēnei kaupapa. But once again, thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with another kai kōrero. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one, especially after today. With that, I'll close our Zoom, I'll close our hui. Mā te wāhi ngaro, tātou e manaki, e tiaki, e rongo whakairi ake ki runga, tūturu whakamaua kia tīna, tīna. Haumia hui e, kai. Tēnā tātou.